Hello everybody. A few mornings ago, the passage in my daily Bible reading notes was 1 Samuel 17, and that's the well-known account of David and Goliath. David was still a young man at the time, probably still a teenager. Goliath was a giant of a man, clothed in his impressive armour and carrying his formidable weapons of war. We know the narrative well, and I guess we've known the story since our childhood days. The question I want to ask is this: where do you place yourself in that episode? In other words, when we read 1 Samuel 17, I'm sure that we all apply it to our Christian lives because we recognise this is not just a tremendously exciting story, although it is, but it's there in our Bibles in order to teach us something. How exactly does the record of David and Goliath apply to you and me? Where do we place ourselves in the action of that Bible chapter? Now, there is a wrong answer to that question, and there is a right answer. Now, here's the wrong answer. Now, I have to admit that I used to think that this was the correct answer in my earliest days as a Christian believer. The wrong answer is to see ourselves as David. And according to this view, like him, we have no special armour, we are completely defenceless in ourselves, but we have our faith in God, just as David had his 5 small stones in his pouch. We might possibly go further and label those 5 stones of faith as obedience, service, Bible reading, prayer and fellowship. Armed with that faith, according to this approach to the narrative, we can face up to the fiercest enemy, whether it's temptation or opposition or doubt or whatever. The problem, of course, is that there is no biblical control on that interpretation. It's an exercise of unbridled imagination. But it sounds convincing. It sounds spiritual. So what's the right answer? Well, I will come to where we fit into the narrative in just a moment, but David, in 1 Samuel 17, and in the big picture of the Bible generally, stands for Jesus. There's a link between the saving acts of God through David and the saving acts of God through Jesus. David is not merely a model of Christian living. The victory which he won against Goliath was on behalf of the Israelite people, so that the people of Israel could rejoice in what had been won for them, which is what we see them doing in the following chapter. David in 1 Samuel 17 is the one who has just been anointed in the previous chapter to be the king of God's choice in the time to come. The word Messiah from the Hebrew or the word Christ from the Greek both mean the anointed one, and so in the big picture of the Bible, David points us forward to the Messiah, the Christ, who is Jesus. David is declared king in God's eyes, but in the chapters that follow, he's despised and scorned and rejected. He wins the victory in 1 Samuel 17 at the point where he seems to be about to suffer total defeat, and his people continue thereafter a fight against an already defeated foe. Of course, we must be careful not to make too much of incidental details which crop up in the narrative in 1 Samuel 17, like David taking food to his brothers in the army, or the dimensions of Goliath's armour, let alone the 5 stones in David's pouch. But when we look at the big picture, I hope you'll agree that this approach makes very, very good sense. So where do we fit into the story? Well, you may already have worked out the answer. We belong among the people of Israel. We belong among the people of God. And that makes sense too, doesn't it? We have to imagine ourselves among the ranks of the Israelite soldiers, looking on while our champion, our David, fights the battle and wins the victory on our behalf. Like those soldiers, we were powerless. We might even have been terrified. But we see defeat turn into victory as our champion, Jesus, crushes death and the devil on our behalf. Our job now is to surge forward in the wake of Christ's triumph to proclaim the victory that he has won. Now, if this approach to 1 Samuel 17 is new to you, I hope you will be thrilled at the way it shines light in an exciting way on the central event of the Bible's great theme of salvation. And if today's thought is working out of a theme with which you are familiar, I hope that you too will be thrilled afresh at the great victory that Jesus has won for us. To him be the praise and the glory.